It is time to talk business, and we start by telling you that the International Monetary Fund, that is the IMF, says Nigeria has adequate capacity to repay its loan. The executive board of the Washington-based institution said this in a statement issued on Monday following conclusion of its 2021 Article 4 consultation with Nigeria. According to the International Monetary Fund, major fiscal and monetary reforms are necessary by the federal government to engender a sustainable, inclusive and long-term growth. The Bretton Woods institution highlighted the need for reforms in the fiscal, exchange rate, trade and governance areas to lift long-term inclusive growth. The IMF stated that Nigeria faces balanced risks with the country's outlook subject to significant risks, including from the pandemic trajectory, oil price uncertainty, and security challenges. The report added that on the downside, low vaccination rates expose Nigeria to future pandemic waves and new variants, including the Omicron variant, while higher debt service to government revenues through higher U.S. interest rates and increased borrowing pose risks for fiscal sustainability. A worsening of violence and insecurity could also derail the recovery. On the upside, the fund noted that the non-oil sector could be stronger, benefiting from its recent growth momentum, supportive credit policies, and higher production from new Dangote refinery. Nigeria's certification of the African Continental Free Trade Area could also yield a positive boost to the non-oil sector, while the production could rebound, supported by more generous terms of Petroleum Industry Act. And farmers in Bauchi State have described the dry season wheat farming as lucrative business capable of promoting food sufficiency and economy of the nation.
Improving the agricultural sector is one of the top priority agenda of President Muhammadu Buhari, aimed at achieving food security in the country. Anchor Borrowers Program is a federal government's agricultural transformation program aimed at encouraging productivity to achieve self-sufficiency in food production. More than 5,000 hectares of wheat farmland in Bauchi State is being cultivated in this year's dry season farming. In some local government areas of Bauchi State, the program is making positive impact as dry season farmers embrace it massively. Bauchi State Coordinator with Farmers Processors and Marketers Association of Nigeria, Ibrahim Abubakar Sadiq, while inspecting some farms in some local government areas, expressed satisfaction and commended the wheat farmers for complementing government's effort towards achieving federal government's agenda. Farmers are expected to pay back the loan with farm produce after harvest.
Let's now take a trip to the commodities market. The hike in prices of foodstuffs, another essential commodity, is becoming alarming for many Nigerians. It is becoming extremely difficult. What new strategies do you think is required to control food price inflation? To do justice to this is an economist with SPM professionals. Paul Alaje, you're welcome to Business Express.
Good morning, and thank you so very much for having me.
It's actually a pleasure to have you at this time.
Thank you so much.
Talking about food inflation.
Yes.
The food commodity has been experiencing inflation. Prices are skyrocketing. And it is a fact that towards the end of last year, we experienced harvest season. And this is just February. Why are we having this price hike or rising prices almost on a daily basis? You go to the market today, tomorrow is a different thing. What are the factors responsible for this economically?
Well, there are a number of factors. First of all, you want to look at the demand side and the supply side. because our population increases and we are not producing just enough that can satisfy the population, it means demand outweighs supply, then you're going to see increase. But for what a lot of people would understand, there are reasons why supply have continued to reduce. So I think those are the areas we should pay attention to. The first one, which is common sense, is insecurity. Most of the parts where you have insecurity around the country are food belt area, where people produce food, people were farming. Most of those communities now, we have places close to them called IDP camps, and people occupy those places. These are people that were farmers producing for the rest of the population. But because of insecurity, they are now out too. It's logistics. Even in cases where you have outputs in places like Plateau State, in Benue State, and so on and so forth, how will those goods be moved to the urban center or city center? Because when you look at the center where some of these inflation is, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, it is at the urban area. So inflation is high, especially food inflation is higher at the urban center. So how do we move goods, how do we move output from rural area to urban area is still a big challenge. And until we're able to produce, to have more and more in that regard, I'm sorry. Again, who are the people that are replacing farmers, old farmers? Many people want to leave the rural community to urban centers to get white-collar jobs or to get any kind of job. Some might even just be to come to town and ride Okada because they feel that what they are getting in farm because of gestation period is too long for them to make revenue. So it becomes a lot of concerns as to whether I will keep having people. And the more educated people are, unfortunately, the less they want to think about farming. So, and if you don't farm, you will have nothing to eat. Again, exchange it and you will be shocked. I don't know if you have heard before, if you go buy yam, and they said the price formerly was 500, now it is 1,200. And Patuba, you said, what happened? They said, oh, dollar don't put money, quote and unquote. So you ask, what has dollar exchange rate to do with yam? But there is a connection. And I'll tell you the connection. The connection is that the yam seller lives in the same economy where you live. Mm-hmm. So even though exchange rate does not affect his yam, his tuber of yam, it can bring to you. Transporters, I kept telling us that the spare part of their motor have increased. And the cost of maintaining their vehicle has increased, even though
where the dollar has direct connection.
It has direct connection with that. Again, they also want to live. They are living in the same environment. They are buying things that has to do with dollars.
So if you talk about cost of living, it also affects them.
And dollar has major impact on cost of living. So
we are going to come to this exchange rate issue and how it affects prices of commodities and also the standard of living. But you mentioned some challenges as being responsible for this rise in food prices, talking about logistics. But let's look at the economics of demand and supply with particular concentration on a particular commodity, rice. Rice is a staple food. A lot of Nigerians love to eat rice. It's not just a Sunday thing. It's becoming a daily thing. And there has been a lot of intervention in this regard. We saw the pyramids being displayed. Yesterday on the news, we had another one in Kaduna and all of that. We're having it across. Why do we still have the price of this commodity on the rise, despite the supply?
Well, I don't know if I should be personal now. I happen to be one of the millers in Abuja. And I can tell you that what determines the price of rice is price of paddy. Paddy is the rice output from farm. A miller cannot sell rice below what is buying paddy, especially automated millers. I understand government is putting all effort together to ensure that we have abundant supply.
Automated millers, sorry to cut you. Is it about the cost of machinery? Is it about the cost of power? What brings it in?
Eventually, the cost of machineries and all of those things become they become negligible when you are producing. For instance, we are doing about 1,000 bags a day or 50 kg. So when you share the price on bags of rice, it becomes very small. It becomes very negligible. The real challenge we have is input, which is paddy. We have seen the pyramid, which is true, but when you compare the pyramid to the population, the size of ton you have, there are mills in Nigeria that what we have, we not serve them for 1 year. And more people feel that the food to eat is rice. So what we need to do is to encourage government. Yes, we have seen what you have done in Abuja, fantastic, through the central bank. How can we have times 20 or 40 of those? It's until you have excess supply that the price will crash.
Is that to say the interventions are not yet enough?
The interventions are going on, but we need to do more. That's on one hand. On the second hand, government also need to ensure that they curtail people who are taking rice paddy out of Nigeria. That's secondly.
We are not having self-sufficiency yet. We're talking exports?
Yes. No, we can export. We can export finished rice.
Good.
But we should not export paddy. So nothing is wrong if we export finished rice. It's going to boost even our foreign reserve, and which is what government is looking for. At the end of the day, government is not saying don't export. We're saying don't export paddy, because when you export paddy, you have taken away jobs that would have happened at the milling session, which is manufacturing, quote and unquote, because that's food processing. So don't export that. Export finished rice. Or sell finished rice in Nigeria, so that we can have the price reduced significantly. Because with all the automated machine and all of those things, by the time you share it on daily basis, on per bag, it's going to be very, very negligible. But there are other things that have added price. For instance, the price of sack has increased by 250%.
The sack itself. The sack. Just the sack.
Has increased by 200. So government is putting a lot of effort in rice, no doubt. But exchange rate, because of the input the sack manufacturer are using, has also increased. So those are the things that we see. You see, economy at the end of the day has to be holistic.
Yeah.
As central bank is focusing on the intervention in rice, and so on and so forth, we also need other agencies of government, department of government, to look at other areas. For instance, our trade policy. If we can increase production of some of these items, or make policy for those who we are buying from to set up in Nigeria, it will go a long way.
Where is the role of the private sector in all of this, talking about the manufacturers?
Yeah, manufacturers are doing a lot, I can tell you. And you may want to talk to the chairman or the leader Manufacturer Association of Nigeria. We're doing a lot. But I can tell you, let me give you another instance. We have electricity. Now, this electricity is not just a challenge. People say electricity is a challenge. No. Even the quality of power. If power fluctuates...
Not just its availability.
Not just availability. The quality. If power fluctuates...
It affects the production chain.
Not just production chain. It could damage machines. So manufacturers have now gotten to a point where they are avoiding using power coming from the grid. They would rather go for generator. What will happen? Surprise. Even what we have... Imagine if what we have is stable and you can regulate the current. It will reduce price by far. But this is Abuja. You could do sample at Idu Industrial and ask how many manufacturers are depending on power distributed by the the
national grid,
by the distribution company. But if distribution company, for them to even make more money, they need to make the quality of the power when it is available to be strong. Some sectors can use them, but there are some sensitive equipment that if power fluctuates when you are using them, or when they just come back, when they just return power suddenly, it goes off in 2 seconds, it's back. It has affected machines. And these machines are not made in Nigeria. That is why some persons will prefer to stay on generator, which is not environmental friendly, which is not cost friendly, which will have implication on food inflation. So this one, is it government who will blame? It's not about blaming government. It's about having a stakeholders together. For manufacturer to say what the problems are. For those who are private sector, because you see, distribution is more of private sector, not just government alone. To see that, okay, we have where the jobs are, which are the manufacturer. Can we practice a policy or something that during the day will ensure you have good quality and quantity? Quantity is number of time power is available. The quality is the kind of power you are giving to them. When the two are there, and you can now increase even your price of power you are giving to them, because you are giving quality, you are giving quantity. At that time, you can see increase in output, which of course will influence supply and reduce price that everybody is looking at. Now, but this policy should not just be in Abuja.
Okay.
The whole 36 states of the federation.
Okay.
Because without jobs, Even when people have light, what would they be using it to do? Right? One of the content is to watch you, to watch your program. But I haven't done that. They are at work. They could also watch you in their offices. I don't know if you get my point. So, quality and quantity of power, two critical things that this course must provide Nigerians with, especially those in manufacturing sector.
Away from food production sufficiency and rising prices, the IMF just concluded consultations with Nigeria, and they are telling Nigeria that we have the capacity to repay our loans. What's your take on that?
Well, I believe we could repay our loan, but my worry, which is the worry of IMF, is for us to get more loans. Because to repay our loan is a matter of planning it. Of course, it's going to have implication on revenue, which is already doing. The biggest challenge Nigeria has is how to generate more revenue. I'm happy when Mr. President mentioned it for the first time around December 2018 when he was presenting his budget to the then National Assembly. I think it was the 8th Assembly. That he said the biggest challenge for Nigeria is not even the insecurity, which is the truth. But non-economists or non-policy maker will not understand. If we can generate more revenue, we can even fund our military more to combat insurgents. But revenue continues to dwindle. On paper, it will look more because we are using naira. But when we want to procure arms and ammunition, we use dollars. And now, because we have
the exchange rate regime comes to play.
And when it comes to play, naira has always been on the defensive. Naira has not been aggressive. Naira has continued to be emaciated. We continue to emaciate naira year in, year out. Why? Because we are not exporting enough. Because we import more. Because the demand side and supply, forces of demand and supply don't favor naira.
We need self-sufficiency first.
We need it. Now, to get self-sufficiency, we've studied about 106 countries. And this is very vital information. What should come first? Agriculture, manufacturing, or service? The first thing of all the countries we have studied, from South Korea to Japan to China, manufacturing comes first. And in manufacturing, factory comes first. All the countries with that kind of population, and that is what they put for. You see, when you start setting up manufacturing outfits, farmers in rice business, they are the king, not even the processors. What happens? Government policy will now be how to push more funds to farmers so that they can have more output. Then as they have more output, they are getting richer, they are getting better. And that's how to lift people out of poverty, which is what we are demonstrating in rice. But we need to expand it by 2,000%, which is about times 20 or times 40. Then we are going to feel the impact. It's too early now for us to feel the impact of a country that has been importing rice millions of tons. And we want in 2 or 5 years to feel the impact. No, it's going to take about 10 years.
Talking about generating revenue and working towards self-sufficiency before we talk about exports for us to have the reserves that we need. IMF is also worried about the issue of fuel subsidy. They are advocating the removal of the subsidy and also saying the official exchange rate should be suspended. What's your take on this? Well, what are the implications?
Well, I've spoken to several IMF papers, and of course, this is not an exemption. I've spoken to several of IMF, even World Bank papers. Now, what IMF is saying in theory is correct.
But in practice?
In practice, it's not practicable. And I'll tell you why. People have said, oh, there is no best time to remove subsidy. There is. It's not correct. When you say there is no best time. The demand and supply is what we should observe. Subsidy should be removed at that time when we can locally produce the same output we consume per day. So, that is the time. I don't know, I will not say it is 1/1/2021 or 31/12/2022. No, there is no such thing. What
you are saying is the time is not yet right.
I am saying that all stakeholders, public and private sector, should agree. And we have 4 refineries. We need to make them work. We have a private refinery coming up by Africa's richest man. We could also build modular refineries such that what we produce, what we consume in PMS daily, we can produce more than that. What will happen to price? Price, you will see neutral price. Now, most this definitely. Is it. If we don't, and we say we want to remove subsidy, and when we import PMS, you know what happens? Anytime there is exchange rate crisis, the price of PMS will go up. Go up. Today, people are saying, oh, fuel price should be about 300 or 400 naira. It's fine. What is exchange rate today? About 400. Rewind back to 2010. If we have the same exchange rate we had as at 2005 or 2006, then as a matter of fact, Nigeria should be buying lower. The real problem is not the output. The real problem is exchange rate weakness. So if we have made exchange rate to be better, the truth is that we will not have problem discussing this, as an issue. And how do we get this done? Private sector is building refineries. Whatever support government can give them. People have said, oh, it's one-man business, is this. You see, this is affecting the whole nation. This is not the time for us to be sentimental. How will government, and government has been providing it, by the way, for that refinery. But government should also be careful. Why? Because we have 4 other refineries. I'm happy that we are working on one. We're working on PPP on one now. The remaining 3, how do we quickly make them functional so that we will not build a monopoly, which is the fear of people. So if
which also has its own effect.
It has its own effect.
Yes,
so if you have 5 refineries in different hands, private sector, it makes sense. At that time, government do not need to even say we want to. Everybody knows subsidy regime, even now, is not sustainable. Wow. But when you do that...
there is so much to say. There is so much to do. But gladly, like you've said, we are on our way achieving what we should achieve, whether it's long-term or short-term,
or medium
we'll get there.
Yes.
Thank you so very much, Paul Alaje, for sharing your deep thoughts and insights with us at this particular point in time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Up next is our Surviving COVID-19 series, where beneficiaries across the country continue to testify of the impact being made by the CBN interventions.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
We produce the popularly known the Ijebu Gari and then Ofada rice. We're a beneficiary of the TCF loan. We received 1.6 million naira, and I got to know about the TCF loan through social media. These people are not being biased. They are not, the old tradition of knowing somebody to get somebody is no longer there.
I assessed 9.3 million naira of AGMI's loan last year, and I heard about the program on social media. The loan has been of tremendous help for my business, because before the assessment of the loan, our production is just like every month we are producing 1 ton of chicken meat, but now we produce like times 3 of that every month.
I assessed 8.5 million from AGMIS. I was able to employ more people because in 2019 I lost almost all my workers because I couldn't meet up with the target. I couldn't meet up with finance. I couldn't meet up with so many things. But upon assessing the loans, I got 10 more workers. It works. You don't need to swerve your way. You don't need to bribe anybody.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central.
Asia Pacific markets were mixed Tuesday trading. Nekaoko reports.
Markets have continued to see a wave of volatility as investors are awaiting key data on Thursday, with the U.S. Labor Department set to release January's consumer price index data. Stocks in Asia Pacific were mixed in Tuesday trade as the Chinese markets led losses in the region. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index fell 0.97% as Chinese technology stocks in the city dropped and Alibaba plunged 3.48%. Elsewhere, Japan's Nikkei 225 gained 0.13%. U.S. stock index futures were muted in early morning trading Tuesday after the major averages moved between gains and losses. Futures contracts tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average were flat. S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq 100 futures were also down 0.02%. European stocks are expected to open slightly higher on Tuesday. The UK's FTSE index is seen opening 21 points higher at 7,573. Germany's DAX 10 points higher, and France's CAC 40 is also pointing up. Markets in Africa are expected to open mixed this Tuesday morning as they did on Monday. But as numbers come in this morning, Tanzania is already posting a positive outlook.
Business Express returns tomorrow at 3 p.m.
This week on Executive Discuss.
In the night, I was sleeping. Then somebody said, you can now mix the herbs.